Thank you for tuning into the CEO Barbecue. My name is Antonio, and today I'm taking you with me to Saskatchewan, where we're going to be looking for uranium. Joining me on the barbecue today is James Sykes, the CEO of Baselode Energy. Before we get into the actual interview, though, I'd like to warn you that we have received monetary compensation for the production of this video from the company that's being interviewed. Please understand that this channel is a business that sells content producing services to companies, which means you cannot rely on this video for research and you should treat this as an advertisement instead. Research is conducted by reading the company's official filings, which you can find on setterplus.ca. Please only watch this if you know what you're doing. This interview is intended only for experienced junior mining speculators because mineral exploration, development, and mining is a very tough business where failure is the norm. This is going to be a conversation that is general and impersonal in nature, containing forward-looking statements. I am not a licensed financial advisor, so before continuing on, please talk to an investment advisor with a good long-term track record because your capital is at risk, and I am neither a licensed financial advisor nor do I have a good long-term track record. If you're not 100% sure you understand 100% of the disclaimers I just showed you and told you about, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said therein. That all said, Baselode is a uranium-focused exploration company with 4 projects in the Athabasca Basin of Saskatchewan, and its shares trade as FIND or FIND on the TSX Ventures Exchange, where the 52-week high is 41 cents and the 52-week low is 7.5 cents. With an $11.5 million market cap and 133.5 million shares outstanding, today this is an 8.5 cent stock. So it is very close to that 52-week high, and that's hopefully something we can touch upon in this interview. No full company overview, of course, since I've interviewed James multiple times in the past. But just briefly, in a nutshell, Baselode is looking for near-surface basement-hosted uranium. Those are they hope those are deposits on the outskirts of the Athabasca Basin using the Athabasca 2.0 exploration philosophy, which aims for discoveries that have the potential for simpler operations, simpler mining techniques, processing conditions, and so on, that simpler than what we're used to seeing in the basin. They currently have 4 projects, 3 of which have been drilled recently, with the flagship and the focus of today's discussion being the Hook property. That's where the Akio discovery is. That's some 40 kilometers, southeast of Cameco's McArthur River uranium mine, and it's about 60 kilometers northeast of the Key Lake uranium mill. Again, we'll hopefully get to talk about and hear an update on all the projects. But before all that, James, we've got to talk about this share price performance because the stock is currently at an all-time low. Volume has dried up, and your news releases don't seem to have moved the share price either. What is going on? Where's the selling pressure coming from?
Before I answer that, I just want to simply say thanks for having me on the barbecue, especially on a day like today in Saskatoon, where it's minus 39 and feels like minus 51. It's nice to be somewhere warm within this barbecue. So you can roast me up and it'll feel better than being outside. Where is the share pressure coming from? Our lack of performance? Great questions. I do actually get asked this quite a bit. Anybody can go back and sit there and look at our share price performance over the last 5 years. And if you correlate them directly to our news releases, you can see that things start to slide after 2022. We were continuously putting out our best results like week after week in the summer of 2022, and there was no market reaction. That's when we started hitting shallow mineralization that's within 20 and 30 meters of surface, and we couldn't get an uptick on that. And so ever since then, the share price has performed weakly. It's been on a downtrend. So even with results have not been able to buoy the share price back up. As of last year, we started last year off 60 cents around that, and we ended up around 10 cents. We had a precipitous drop, but a lot of that, again, if you go back and you correlate news releases with share price performance, especially in last year's case, you can see that the two of the 3 largest drops, actually all 3 largest drops, were all directly related to 4 months and a day from 4 months and a day after we closed our financings, our flow-through financings. So I'm under the impression that it was simply just flow through shares as soon as they became available were just hitting the market en masse to take advantage of some of the Canadian tax benefits that are available to these to investors here.
How do you fix that then moving? I mean, I'm not asking how do you fix the share price performance from here on out or push it higher because that's something we'll talk about as well. But how do you make sure this doesn't happen again? I mean, are you not going to use flow through again? Are you going to, put your share registry together in a more cognizant way? Or like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, for raising future funds, exactly. We have been actively looking for long-term strategic back end shareholders, and that's who we will be focusing on. We are currently talking with some strategics, and I hope that something does come about of it. But we're looking for people who would hold on to our shares. We're not looking at flow through for next few financings at the very least, just because of what has happened, and we know that with the tax benefits the shareholders get, it's really hard for a junior company to compete against those tax breaks that the individual investor can get 60% in Saskatchewan. If you're throwing in $10,000, you're getting $6,000 immediately off your tax break on your taxes for that year. Oh, there goes that, and that just really it really makes things difficult for any junior company to try to combat those the benefits that you can get as a junior company, or sorry, as an investor. So we look for we look for stronger long-term supporters. We have had plenty of them. The amount of investors that I've talked to over the past, especially 2024, I had a lot of investors reaching out with their comments and just, why is share price not performing so well? A lot of these guys were original shareholders back in 2020. Those are the type of investors that we love. Those are the type of investors that we know that they stayed with us through thick and thin. Those are the type of guys that we need to find, people that we need to find to really buoy this thing back up. But then it also comes down to results. We've got Accio. We've drilled off Accio. I personally believe Accio is a mineable deposit, but now we have to prove that. And I think that could be something that could help buoy our situation. But it also comes down to drill results, and I think that's what a lot of investors really look for. Nobody really cares about anything else. When it comes to uranium, what I've noticed, especially when you're in the Athabasca, when it comes to uranium and comes to results, you need to have high grade. The investors want to see 10%. They want to see 20%. And it doesn't matter how thick, doesn't matter how deep, you start kicking out numbers like that, and it just grabs people's eyes, and nothing else matters. It's like, oh, 10%, boom. Yeah, it's valuable rock. Can you pull it out of the ground? That's always been my take on things. So can Accio deliver that? From what we've seen, to be honest, you check all of our news releases. Can we deliver consistent results like that? Not at Accio. So that drives us to looking for a new discovery, something that we could attach onto Accio, something that could boost our credibility within this uranium space. I think a new discovery would be absolutely paramount for our company to regain tracks or momentum that we've lost in the past. But new investors, exploration, push Accio to the limits.
I want to talk about that, and we're going to be talking about some of the results that you've been getting out of Accio as well later on. But just on the money part for a second, I am under the impression that you've got a bunch of cash right now and you don't have to raise money anytime soon. Let's start with that. How much money do you have in cash right now?
We've got about 10 million in cash, 5 million working capital, 5 million in flow through that we raised last year. So that flow through has to be spent by the end of this year, and that's our exploration budget right now, which is a very beneficial situation for us. You're correct. We're not going out raising capital. We're very happy with the situation that we have, and we believe that the targets that we have available to us are the type of targets that can yield a success, that can yield those drill hole results, that can get people interested in baseload again.
What about the 5 million hard dollars? What are you going to do with that?
That keeps lights on for a number of years. We use that for We use that for all of our administrative, marketing, like conferences. We're going to PDAC in a couple of weeks. Um, yeah, just keeping the lights on. We've got a very low burn rate. Uh, Part of that's just the way that part of that's just our internal operations. We've been very good at keeping our expenses down. Being part of the org group has helped a lot with that. Just um, being able to cut down on a lot of administrative costs or share those administrative costs with a lot of companies within the org group.
What are you planning for G&A this year? Last year I believe that was under a million or far below the million. So is that where you're planning on staying for G&A, or do you need more money this year?
No, we plan to stay around the same, if and might even be a little bit less.
Mm. How come? Who did you fire?
No, didn't fire anybody actually. No, we've because we're not drilling at the moment. We've actually we've lent out a couple of our geos to a fellow uranium explorer, and that has allowed us to not dip into our own coffers to pay for our personnel.
Mm.
So there are some little cash saving things that we've done. The because we're not sorry because we're not actively exploring at the moment. You know, we're not actively raising money. There's a lot of legal costs, and the news release costs are all quite low at the moment. Barely anything, to be honest. So there are a lot of cash savings, little things throughout the year that will help us keep the cash overhead for this year at a lower cost, in theory.
So the money that you have in treasury right now, so about 10 million, you said, so about a 50-50 split between hard dollars and flow through. How far does this get you from a milestone perspective to or through MRE and beyond, or how do you see it?
Well, let's actually talk about the MRE. That kind of goes hand in hand with results, though. Uh, so 5 million in cash is basically all goes towards the all goes towards our exploration. The 5 million flow through. It's all towards exploration. MRE that we had planned is it can't is fits within that and is not very cost intensive. Anything outside of the MRE has not been allocated funds yet. There have been some studies that we have conceived to advance our knowledge of Accio mineability, but we haven't made any firm commitments to advance those. The MRE that MRE is on hold, and that's because we don't have results. The company that we wanted to use for an MRE had to push us out of the way because we thought we would have results in a timely fashion, as was planned for last year. We delivered results to the lab on a 2-week basis. And then as of October, we just weren't getting results. So because we don't have results, we can't complete the MRE right now. And the company that we wanted to do has taken on their other clientele. So now we're pushed back down further in the list in the long in their line of companies that they have planned to work for. So that kind of throws up big question marks about where we sit and what we can get done. Still big question marks about when we can get assays back. But as it stands right now, basically the 5 million is 99.9% allocated to further exploration to discover the next couple deposits on our projects.
Well, so you're not guiding a new timeline on the MRE. I mean, it's kind of a wait and see approach.
It's because the assays have really messed us up. Everything's out of whack.
Hmm. We'll get to that. I do have a question about that, of course, but just before we move on from the topic of share price performance and capital raising and stuff like that, I suppose because you have assays coming up right now, you'd be in a blackout period. But I know you exercised some warrants late last year. Again, I haven't seen you in the open market though. With the price as low as it is, why aren't you buying right now?
I'm in blackout
Would you be
because
buying, or will you
we
be buying when that ends?
absolutely. I've already made a commitment. I've got options that are also coming due. They're at 10 cents. So with the price that it is right now, it's still buying those options still makes sense. Um, Depends if it's if the market's at 8 cents, maybe that's the better play. But yeah, I've got cash in reserve that I'm waiting to deploy within Baselode because I think that our future looks absolutely brilliant.
Mm. Well, I hope that is true. As you know, I'll keep you to it. So hopefully, in a couple of months, we talk again, and we see that SETI filing all in the green. Going back to the assays that you're waiting for. Why is it taking so long? I mean, the labs are backed up, or is there not too many labs, or what's going on?
Uranium explorers use SRC, Saskatchewan Research Council, because they're the world's most reputable lab for uranium assays. They do a lot of work with Cameco and Orano on the mine side of things. That's what they really specialize in. I think that was their founding. Um, that was one of the things that helped found SRC was just their uranium specialty. They've been great for many years. I've started using them in 2006 when I was in the industry, and everything was great last year. We drilled Bear, we drilled Catharsis, we drilled Hook. We put about 20,000 meters into the ground. And from February up until about September, we were getting results back on a 5 to 8 week turnaround time from when we dropped it off to when we got results, which is industry standard. 5 to 8 weeks, absolutely industry standard. After September, results just tottered off. We weren't getting anything back. We're running anywhere from 12 to 25 weeks now with still no end in sight. When I talked to the lab in October, they originally told me that they were short on people. When I talked to them in November, they said that they were short on people, but they had also received 4 times the amount of results within the period of June to September than they did all of 2023. So they've just been slammed with a lot of samples coming in from a whole bunch of different exploration companies. And when I continued to follow up after that, everything went dark. They did not hear anything back from them. But it wasn't until last week, Thursday, Friday last week, when I received a response from the lab saying that we should have all of our results back within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I will hold them to that. We need our results. It's painful. We started receiving some of the results last week. So as of last week, we were still outstanding 50% of our lab results, of our sample results that we dropped off at the lab. Absolutely crazy that we're running on almost half a year and we're still waiting on 50% of our assay results. When we explore, we have crew rotations every 2 weeks, and our samples come out with us every 2 weeks when we do crew changes, and then we drop them off to the lab. So we were dropping the samples off to the lab every 2 weeks, expecting to get results back in that same 5 to 8 week turnaround time, so that we would always have news coming out every 2 to 4 weeks. But yeah, that's just the lab. Whatever happens at the lab, whatever has happened at the lab has happened, and it sounds like they've got things organized now. It sounds like things are back on schedule. So I'm hoping that that they can hold true to their word, and we can get some results back, and then we can put some results out and start to get baseload back in the news again. This is great. It's not only the MRE that's being held up by lack of results, but it's also our plans. We need all of our assay results back to completely understand not only Accio, what we've seen there in the infill drilling, but also the exploration drilling that we did around Accio, but also the exploration targets that we did around on the Hook project. We were excited about 2 targets in particular, what we call TAB and TT. TAB is about 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers northeast of Accio, and then TT is about 5 or 6 kilometers south of Accio. So they're very proximal to Accio, which we like, because if there are new discoveries up there, then we can start looking at this idea of a hub and spoke model, that we've got multiple deposits all within the same area, and all it takes is one road to get in there, really. And the rest is all easy peasy. But we what we saw visually from each of those areas we liked. It's just we need to see those final pieces. We need to see the chemistry, because the chemistry is one thing that really speaks louder than a lot of other things. There are a lot of subtleties that we know how to look for, but it all comes out in the chemistry. It's just people. I've heard many people say, "Well, you put out scent results, can't use that." Say you can if you got a lot of it, but if we're on the edge of a system and we're not, and we think we're close, then we have to look at the pathfinders, and we have to look at the uranium results where you're looking for anything above 10 ppm uranium, and that doesn't come out in the scintillometer. You can't see that with a scintillometer. You need the assay results to really speak. Uh, Lead isotopes, uranium thorium ratios, things like that all get used for us to vector into what we think are going to be the most prospective areas to drill. So again, we have a very strong idea of where we want to drill, but we don't know which area we want to drill first, which one will look better for us, and we're kind of flying blind here at the moment.
Hmm. Why don't you change labs? I mean, I understand that this is a reputable lab and so on, but there must be other labs that can do uranium.
Absolutely, and that is already being considered for this year. That we can't have this happen to us again. This is it's ridiculous. So we're already looking at other labs to send samples from this year's drilling to those other labs and expect better turnaround times.
When do you think because you said it slows down your plans and is it gonna slow down the drill program? When do you think that's gonna start?
No, we again, because we had an idea of where we wanted to drill. We were not planning to drill in the wintertime. Wintertime, we usually we with the three projects that we've been actively exploring, Bear, Catharsis, and Hook, we've relegated Bear and Catharsis as our winter exploration programs because they're easier to access in the wintertime, especially building in a camp and just getting to our sites. And Hook is our summer program. The Hook is our summer project, just because we're 100% reliant on helicopter access for Hook. So we knew that we weren't coming back to Bear and Catharsis. That really wrote off the winter. So everything's on Hook. That's where we plan to go back to. And we're probably not going to get back there until about mid-May, end of May, with the drill turning, hopefully around end of May to early June. But where right now, that's still the question that needs to be answered. As frustrating as it is, I know a lot of investors are frustrated out there because we haven't had results. Trust me, I'm an investor too. I'm also the CEO, and I'm very frustrated.
Hmm. Where are the assays that are going to be coming out? Where are they from? It's from the three projects all together, but where exactly, or what is it from?
Nope. Bear and Catharsis results have all been out. We put them out in our quarterlies. We didn't do specific news releases for those. Just they weren't material information. The Hook results. We're waiting on basically everything from Accio since hole 119, which we released in October. So we've got the problem with Accio. Well, it's not a problem. Sorry, just the way that we drilled Accio in the summer. We started off on pod 6. We drilled pod 6, and then we stepped out and we started looking outside of Accio because we really wanted to find a new pod at Accio. And unfortunately, we didn't hit any significant radioactivity in those holes, and that was about 12 holes or so. So they're not really material holes. And then we came back to pod 7 and started infill drilling in pod 7. And that's where our hangup is right now with the lab, is that we're only just starting to see results from the pod 7 drill holes coming in. That's around holes 134 through 139. We're just starting to see those results come rolling in. We don't have anything for a complete drill hole yet, but once they out as they come, if we can get half the results this week, fantastic, and we can about half the results on pod 7, and then do the other half when the results come in. If they all come in one big bulk swoop in 3 weeks time, 2 or 3 weeks time, then we just put it all out then. The exploration results again for TAP and TT, we're still pending on those as well to all come in and just finish that story.
So the way you'll be announcing assays depends on the way you'll be getting them. So it could be that they're all in one big news release.
We will break up Accio and exploration. Um, so yeah, we did exploration around Accio, which we still consider Accio, but we did regional exploration drilling on the Hook project as a whole, and we'll break those out. So we had two. It's actually pretty simplistic on our end. We had two drill hole monikers. We had drill holes that started with AK, which stands for Accio, and had drill holes that started with HK, which stands for Hook. The HK drill holes will all be put out at the same time. Those are our regional exploration holes, and then the AK holes will be put out when we've got material information to put out for those.
Right. Okay. Well, do you think you're becoming maybe a bit of a target in the meantime, though? I mean, I'm going back to the share price performance here a little bit, but with the market cap now as low and with the cash that you have in the bank, which enterprise value, that's putting you not much above zero, essentially. What's stopping some of the land consolidators from kicking off a hostile takeover attempt? And if they did, could you stop it?
I've wondered that myself. To be honest, we've not had anybody come knocking on our door and say, "Hey, we want you." Say, okay. Um, I'm surprised that nobody has, given our land package, given the results that we've drilled, given Accio is a near surface discovery with significant mineralization. Can we stop it? Well, it's up to the shareholders. It's really up to our shareholders to vote on that if we can stop it or not. If the right deal comes in, beautiful. If everyone thinks that something works, then great, let's do it. If again, it's really up to our shareholders to vote on if they would like the deal that is proposed or not.
What would you like? And does the right deal exist, though? I mean, at this price, again, an enterprise value slightly above zero here. Does a right deal exist? Whatever the premium it is still pennies on the dollar to what you were trading just a year ago.
Yeah, I think we're undervalued. I really do, and I think that we can regain some of our market cap and our share price. Whether or not that's going to be dependent on results from Accio, I'm not holding my breath for that. Just given market reaction to the last 2 years of our results. Excuse me. So I do think that it's all going to be exploration based, and I really have a lot of confidence in our abilities to make a discovery at Tab and TT because they look ripe for discovery. And with the 5 million in the bank, I think that's a heavy treasury to go out and rightfully do a proper job of exploring those two targets and making sure that we do the required work to make a discovery and not miss anything, which is very easy to do in this industry. But I think that after this summer will dictate a lot. It's a big gamble. That's the one thing that actually scares me the most is the idea that this is a huge gamble. It's almost as if everything is completely dependent on an exploration program. That if we're successful, great, we'll be around, we'll survive. But what if we're not successful? What if what we're seeing at Tab and TT really don't pan out? What if they're just smoke and no fire? Which again, I have seen plenty of time, which is why I'm very, very um, it's why I'm bullish on seeing the results, the assay results, because that will help identify smoke versus fire. In theory, you can still have red herrings in geochemistry, but it's not as common.
Well, let's maybe
So
talk about some of the technical aspects of what you've been drilling so far and kind of the assays that you're expecting here, and what you did get over the last couple of months. I noticed that you came across more hematite-clay alteration, and specifically, it's starting to show up at depth as well. Does the intensity and distribution of that alteration tell you anything about the potential for more mineralization at depth, or even how far down Accio may go?
Yeah, the hematite and the hematite clay, it's not at Accio, it's the TT zone. Very excited about that. The discovery hole for that alteration, hole HK16, blew us away. We were hitting 200 meters of pure clay alteration. That doesn't happen everywhere. I've actually not seen that amount of clay on any drill hole outside of a uranium deposit. When I look at some of the other uranium deposits around, like Rough Rider that I worked on, Rough Rider was this massive clay alteration halo, beautiful, and you could be well outside mineralization, still be hitting this thick clay alteration, and you wouldn't know that you're right beside a uranium deposit until you're actually drilled. You could be 10 meters away and you wouldn't know it. The chemistry would show it. The chemistry would sorry, it wouldn't show it. The chemistry would suggest that you are close and you're on the right path. But just that clay alteration is phenomenal. However, you go over to Arrow. Arrow did not have clay. Nothing. Arrow was very tight and just like high grade mineralization, very, very small amounts of clay. It had a very narrow halo. But then you start looking at some of these other deposits. Millennium. Millennium had just thick white clay, and I got to see it in 2007. I got to see some of their drill core, thick white sequences of clay, just hundreds of meters again. Absolutely phenomenal. You could just take your fingernail and go scratch right through it. Griffin. So the discovery holes that help lead to Griffin, ZKO4 and ZKO6, same thing. Mass amounts of clay, little bits of radioactivity in those holes, 100 meters away from Griffin itself. So again, you can be 100 meters away. That's almost right beside something. Okay, that's right beside a deposit. You can be that close and just miss it. But understanding the alteration, understanding the chemistry is a big thing. So right now, what we've seen with this clay system with hole 16 that we hit, followed up with hole 17, which we shot up. So hole 16 came in the middle finger, hole 17 we shot up, and we noticed that the clay alteration was a lot thicker and just it was more well developed with hole 16. Hole 17, everything got shallow. We stepped off and we did a couple more exploration in another area, and then decided to end off our summer drill campaign last year with going back to this TT area to the clay. So we had hole 17, hole 16, then we followed up with hole 20. So we came down dip again, and everything just got even stronger. More clay, better hematite. Everything was looking absolutely amazing down there. And then we switched to get a third dimension, and we drilled this way across in line with hole 20, and we drilled hole 21. Yeah, hole 21. And then we drilled hole 22 on side, hole 22 to the south, which again didn't look very strong, not as strong. And we drilled hole 23, which was equally as strong as hole 21. So what we're seeing is this massive clay alteration system. It's 100 meters of clay. You just pure clay alteration. Everything's obliterated. Fantastic. And what's the significance of that? Fluids. Fluids have run through this, hot fluids, the right fluids to change the rock chemistry, the right fluids that would leach minerals and would move minerals have come through these rocks. Where does it end? We don't know. And that's the beautiful part that we're seeing right now, is that we've got this open target at depth. And it looks very enticing, and we can't walk away from it. That's not a frustrating part. It's exciting in the exploration sense of things, but we would not do our shareholders justice by walking away from that target, because it has all of the visual earmarks for being near a high grade uranium, large uranium system. We're talking like Cigar Lake alteration style. And that's actually one of the things that I use as an indicator or gauge on how big or how significant the system is I've compared it to Cigar Lake, and this thing looks like a massive Cigar Lake halo. But we're seeing the opposite ideas, that things look like they've all come down. Whereas Cigar Lake came up, we're seeing things that look like they have come down. But we're all excited about it. we think that is the best target that we've drilled yet.
Well, you're saying that it came down, and you're talking about fluids, or you're assuming that it was fluids. But do you think that the alteration came as a result of the primary mineralizing event here, rather than it just being the result of oxidation?
Well, no, there's multiple events. There's not one single event. There's definitely multiple fluid pulses coming through this. The Athabasca, from what I've seen on a number of deposits that I've worked on in my own internal theses, and correlating with some of the other guys who've been around the industry for quite a while, is that there's this typical bleached event, this ground setting event that turns everything to clay. It's bleached. Then you get your oxidized fluids come in multiple pulses, and those are the systems that typically carry uranium with it. And then it's just like a repeat. And then you get bleached and oxidized and bleached and oxidized and then chlorite and oxidized. It's just you have to look for these structural systems that carry a lot of fluids, because uranium's carried in fluids, and you need to see multiple pulses. And that's exactly what we're seeing, because we're seeing remnant hematite at top. And as you get deeper, it looks like it becomes more oxidized as we get deeper, whereas everything on top has been deoxidized. So if you want to think purple versus red, that's probably the best way. If you're ever taking meat out, leave meat out for a day, fresh meat, it's red, means oxidized. It loses its oxidation when it's out, just sitting there, and it'll turn like a darker maroonish, purplish color. So it's being deoxidized. So we want to find that fresh oxidation system, because that's what's going to carry the uranium with it. So as we go deeper, we do see the fresher oxidized hematite system at depth. So now we've got this massive clay alteration system coming. Let's do it like this, coming down something like that, and with our strongest oxidation on this front. So that's going to be one of our main targets, is to continue following that oxidation front. In essence, we're chasing the tail of a redox front. We have all the signs that redox should be there. We haven't fully seen it yet. We have seen little spatterings of signs that there was pre-existing redox fronts, but they've been washed away. They've been bleached, remobilized. So we do think this is the type of system that has all of the right characteristics that we need to find another deposit, especially on the Hook project being so close to Aki.
Well, but it is, essentially it's not, the alteration here that you're talking about is not due to oxidation. It is due to the mineralizing event. That's what I was talking about.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's not an oxidation event.
Okay.
Like it's not a standalone oxidation event
Yeah.
that just happens anywhere in the world.
Okay.
Um, we believe, well, it's hard for us to be able to quantify or qualify that, I guess, qualify it.
Hmm.
But from what we can tell, and our experience in the basin suggests that this is a fluid driven event, part of the mineralized fluid system.
Hmm. Is it you say that it compares, the alteration type compares to other deposits? How does the intensity of the clay outrage or hematite clay alteration that you're seeing compare to other projects in the basin, or some of the projects that you again used as comparisons here? So Millennium, or or Griffin.
Compares 1 to 1. The
Okay.
same type of clay. Clay is clay. The one thing we do have back is all of our clay spectral analysis, which we were going to include with the geochem results. Again, they don't tell you anything about mineralization. Not They don't tell you anything directly about you've got uranium or not. You have to make inferences. So the clay speciations that we're seeing in that clay are all the right clay, illite.
Hmm.
It's all illite, and that's the type of clay that typically mantles uranium deposits. Is you've got your deposit here, and you've got this halo of illite, and this alteration, this just zone of hundreds of meters of clay that we're seeing is all illite. Now, to go one step further with that, there there is an idea that there's a specific type of illite that's based on your spectral alignment. So we're going to talk a little bit of science here, spectroscopy. If anybody knows what spectroscopy is, it's basically you're looking at the light reflectance wavelengths of certain minerals and different type of elements or combination of elements, like the OH radical will identify different peaks in the system. Now, there's one specific peak that we're looking for in illite, and these things can shift. Okay? They can shift around their neutral point. Whether a fluid's more acidic, it will go one way. Whether it's more basic, it will go one way, which is indicative of a pH of a system. Uranium systems are typically naturally neutral. They're about 7 pH, and so you're looking for a spectroscopic wavelength at a certain peak. And again, this is something that I've done on other deposits, and I can make that correlation as well. And we're seeing that peak. We're seeing that right style of what I would say is the right illite within that clay alteration. And it's just everything about this whole system just keeps saying, hey, you got to drill me some more. Keep drilling, and your hopes and your dreams will be answered. So that's what we're looking for, and that's what we're really prioritizing.
I also noticed that you hit 13 meters of radioactivity within the pegmatite. Is that broadly significant for the project? Does it tell you that there could be structurally controlled mineralization beyond the pegmatite contact?
Exactly. That's the tab area. So the tab area, we hit about 30 meters. I would consider it to be 30 meters of just anomalous radioactivity.
Hmm.
But I think it's a system that is masked, because yes, we do have this pegmatite, and the pegmatite's radioactive as they naturally are. Most, not all of them, but this one is naturally radioactive. We're waiting to see if it's uranium or thorium that is causing that radioactivity. Hopefully it's uranium, because then you've got a fertile source. The thing with that pegmatite, though, is that it's all been altered. It is not a fresh pegmatite. There are little microfractures coming through it, and there's a lot of red alteration in the system. So it is very difficult to actually pinpoint, is this radioactivity due to the pegmatite, or are we seeing these microfractures that are associated with uranium? Are these hematite fractures, are they actually or the hematite alteration, is it bringing uranium into the pegmatite? Very, very difficult. And again, even with the chemistry on that, that's going to be difficult to really pinpoint and break apart, because the radioactivity that we've seen there is very low. That it's typical radioactivity of a pegmatite. And if the results come back typical of a pegmatite as well, then we can say it's pegmatite. But if there are shifts outside of that typical pegmatite geochemical signature, then we can start considering it to be something that was brought in through the structural system with the hematite. Hmm. Now, when we look at where the pegmatite is, and this actually goes to what you just mentioned about the contact, our pegmatite is here, and we've got metasediments all up through here. And this whole metasedimentary corridor is just, again, it's altered to high heaven. It is bleached. There's hematite fluids coming through there. It is just wonderful. But it's right when we get within the last 5 to 10 meters of this contact within the metasites that we start seeing some really strong hematite structures. But it's also right within the last 3 meters of the contact that the metasediments themselves are altered, their structures, and they're elevated in radioactivity. That is what makes us think that the fluid system, a uranium-bearing fluid system, has come through the area, used the pegmatite as a buttress. And so I think a lot of the radioactivity that we are seeing down in the pegmatite is not just pegmatite. I think it's going to be part of this structurally controlled uranium system coming through and just breaking apart something that is really strong and hard. But that gives us the target that now we can look up dip from this. Now we can look, to the north of it, to the south of it. But we've got a lot of room to sit here and explore. Again, this is one of these targets that we just don't walk away from, because if we're seeing structurally controlled uranium that is being driven into an area with oxidized fluids, that's what you're looking for. All Athabasca uranium, every single system out there is all structurally controlled. Every single one. The uranium came in with the oxidized fluid systems. You need to find that pathfinder. That is the ultimate pathfinder to finding these systems. Then you just have to find the right criteria where the structure dilates and the right reduced material was there. Because without that redox front, then it's difficult for uranium to precipitate in any quantifiable form. But we think that this is, again, tab shows that. Tab shows hematite structures with radioactivity, then it cannot be ignored.
I did also notice that there's some quartz stock works in one of those news releases. I wouldn't have expected it, but then obviously I'm not a geo. So what's the deal with the quartz in your core?
That's quartz is, in my opinion, quartz is the most underrated. It's the most underrated alteration halo.
Hmm.
Again, based on every system I've worked on or even seen, there's always a quartz halo. There's always a quartz halo, and I think it has something to do with the oxidation event that it is part of the hematite oxidation front. Even going back to, let's go back to Arrow, which did not have a lot of alteration, but above Arrow, in non-mineralized Arrow, right above it all, there's this. It's a quartz hematite breccia, where a quartz event was first. That quartz event later got broken up by a hematite structure, by hematite fluids coming in, filling in that same structure, and it remobilized. There was quartz again later, and there was hematite again later. We saw it at Rough Rider in certain areas. Again, it's not all over. What this system typically is, from my understanding, is that this is the entry point for your oxidized fluids. This is your oxidized fluid pathway. We saw it at Rough Rider. We've Raven Horseshoe has it. I know Maurice Bay has it. I know other companies look for it. Accio has it. And Tab has it, and so does TT.
A lot of what's happened in the Athabasca Basin and how essentially the whole bowl of the basin, if you will, got mineralized is not well understood, though, as far as I know. So, is that something you're going to spend some time on or go after, like doing, I don't know, isotopic studies or to determine the origin of the temperature of the fluids and so on? Is that something you're going to go after?
No, no, it's overkill. That's more academic.
Hmm.
We do academic work, but we do it based on the results that we drill. That
Yeah.
we don't have to go out and spend more money on. We do some mineralogy work, but again, that was more for Accio to understand the mineralization and learn if it was amenable to leaching and milling, which it is. But as far on the exploration side of things, we don't go further down that rabbit hole. I don't think there's really that much of a point to it. We can learn enough from geochemistry and the clay speciations and the rocks themselves. They speak a lot.
Well, why I ask you that is because I thought it might help you understand why you're hitting some radioactivity within the sandstone too, and maybe you can talk to me about that. But I thought the Athabasca 2.0 was not about uranium in the sandstone, yet you've started hitting some radioactivity within the sandstone. So does that change anything for you?
No, we haven't hit radioactivity in the sandstone. We were
Oh,
exploring for it. No, we have not hit. We were exploring for an unconformity style mineralization, but we haven't really hit anything there. There's nothing really popped up at Accio within the sandstone. The See, Athabasca 2.0 is about shallow mineralization.
Mhm.
We want to avoid water issues. So we can, open pits have been done in the Athabasca with over 100 meters sandstone thickness. We know that. That's tried, test, and proven true. And they're actually the last open pits within the Athabasca in this part of the in the early 2000s. So it's even recent developments. So we know they can be done. With Accio, we've got about 100 meters maximum sandstone cover, but it's wedge shaped. Accio is over here where it's very thin, but 100-meter sandstone doesn't scare us away. It still fits within Athabasca 2.0 because that is a mineable solution without significant water issues. It's open pitable, keeping your costs down. As soon as you start getting below that 100 meters, again, that's when water becomes an issue, and that's what we try to avoid.
We can talk about Accio as well. I think Pod 6 has kind of been the star of the show for the last couple of months. Let's call it half a year. It's got the most growth within the previous drilling. How come? What's different about this specific pod? And can it tell you something about where to drill next?
Pod 6 is really right in the middle of it all. It is the star of Accio right now because that's the only one we have results back for. After those results came out in October, again, we just haven't had results. It was after we drilled Pod 6 is when we stepped out and started doing more exploration around the area, around Accio. So we were a ways, so we were about 10 drill holes off, or there's a lag from hole 119, which is the last one in Pod 6, to hole 133, 134, which goes back to Pod 7 that we, so there is that lag of multiple drill holes that won't have significant results. Pod 6, what does it really tell us? Actually, Pod 6 is very interesting. It tells us that we do believe that there is more mineralization there. We do believe that the model has to change slightly, but it also opens up another idea for us that there is a structure that we haven't, a structural orientation that we really haven't targeted. The reason is simply because most of the mineralization that we've been able to string together has all been pretty consistent in one direction. But Accio's a mess. I've looked at it. I've looked at all the core through pictures, and it is a structurally complex mess. It is just this. It's garbage. It is. It's atrocious trying to figure things out. It's not like Arrow was nice. Arrow, like I said earlier, Arrow was nice. Everything was clean, discreet. It was just boom, very sharp and constrained. Accio is just this. Everything's gone.
Hmm.
And you try to figure it out. It's brutal. But we do believe that potentially what we've seen in Pod 6 and other drill holes could suggest that as we've been drilling this way, the intersect mineralization that we've see going this way, are we missing another set of structures that are hosting mineralization going this way? That as we've been drilling this way, we've just been either clipping them or just not even seeing them entirely. And there's a few subtleties within Pod 6 that would suggest that is the case.
There was also some grade variability within this pod too, if I'm not mistaken. So there was hole 119 came up with 21 meters of 0.28%, and hole 118 came back with it was only about 8.5 meters of mineralization, but then over twice the grade of 119. So it was 0.59%, to be specific. What's causing this great variability? Is that what you just told me? And what is it telling you about the pod as a whole, or maybe in the project as a whole?
The structure is controlling it. The structure and the fluids, whatever's bounding things. Again, sometimes with that quartz system that we have in there. So we talked about quartz earlier. There is this silica system that has come in, and that has acted as a buttress in some points, and sometimes that just gets faulted, and we can't find the other end of where that was faulted or offset because the faults don't always have to go like this or like that. They can go that way or they can go that way. So again, the structural controls, some of the alteration impedes mineralization. It's really trying to trying to piece things together and just making sure that when we look at the rock, can we see the features that tell us which way the rocks are actually moving. And that's the tough part with this one. But it's unfortunately the grade variability is what it is. Most of the times, what we do see is a higher grade core that is mantled by wider and thicker lower grade mineralization, but all within the same type of structure.
I thought the rocks were moving northwards. That's something I thought I read in the news release. I'm probably mistaken with something though.
No, that's what we conceive to be the main structural control, because that's the orient. We've drilled east west to intersect structures going north south.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our results have tied together very, very nicely. You take Accio, you string it up to GMZ. It's all on that same north northwest trend, which makes sense that is the controlling structure. But as per all structural systems, you have one structure. You're going to probably have structures that are like this that can also control mineralization.
Hmm. What is the higher grade associated? Like what minerals is the higher grade associated with on or within pod 6?
It's all uraninite. Actually, we have done. Yeah, we've done a climb scan on it. We've done the mineralogy on it. It's all uraninite.
Okay, there's no nickel or anything else complicating anything more.
No, no.
Okay.
As surprising as it is, it's funny. I've thought about that a few times. So I go back to our original drill season, the Discovery drill season 2021, and hole one came back with pretty interesting nickel, more even better copper.
Hmm.
And we haven't been able to replicate any results like that in Accu's. Like, so when we only had 4 holes, I thought this might have been a polymetallic system. No, that's not the case. It's actually very clean. It's which is great, which is perfect because that's what you want for a mill. You want clean mineralization to go in. No nickel to worry about, no cobalt, no copper, no moly, no sulfides or very, very low sulfides. Clean system, throw it in. You don't have to worry about anything gumming up your milling fluids or any reactions or things like that. Low sulfides means low acid rock drainage potential, so that's perfect, absolutely perfect for waste rock and putting them into not storage, but yeah, into waste piles.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't have to worry about acid rock drainage and waste piles.
yeah.
It's Accio is very beneficial that in that regards that we've got clean mineralization, and with all of it being uraninite, basically it's 99% over 99% uraninite, regardless of grade.
Okay, so there's no arsenic, cadmium, mercury association, nothing of the nasties.
No selenium, no nothing.
Okay. Is pod 6 the same alteration signature as the other pods?
Yeah, they're all very similar. They're all part of the same structure. Again, it's a dog's breakfast of things in there that
Hmm.
they all look the same.
Okay, but
We're
what
current
did you then more specifically, what did you use to zone in on that higher grade? Because what I'm really going after here, trying to understand is where can we
old
find more high
results.
grade?
Old results. It was those were infill drill holes that
Okay.
we had. We had pod 6 modeled based on I think it was 3 drill holes, which is not enough to really sit there and model. So we based everything on where have we drilled, where can we kind of cut mineralization, where do we think we can expand it, and so we put those 3 holes in there. 117 didn't pan out as we thought it would or hoped it would, but 118, 119 definitely overperformed as they were better than the original 3 drill holes that were in there. But they tie in nicely and they do start creating this they start adding sorry, they're all contiguous. There, that's they start emphasizing that what we have modeled needs a little bit of rejigging, but the idea that was there is correct. Maybe there are some other things, as mentioned. a secondary fault system that we need to follow up. But the general structure and the general strike of mineralization seems to be legit and continuous based on those drill holes. Can we find more? We're going to start running into other pods. And with Accio, we have done pretty significant drilling. We were drilling on 25-meter line spacing. It's, to be honest, we put a lot of drill holes into Accio. And I think we're at a good point where we can put a strong model together that not only would dictate where future exploration would be, but also for an MRE and also for mineability.
Why I asked you how you're vectoring in on it as well is because I was thinking about the ANT survey that you had done, ambient noise tomography, I believe it's what it's an acronym for. How was that? Did it help? Is it a viable targeting tool for uranium?
I can't answer for a viable tool for uranium. I can only answer for ourselves. And I honestly, it picked up Accio, but it picked up a giant area. It picked up basically what the gravity did anyway and what the magnetics did. And it just emphasized that we've got this large anomaly right in this area. It was not able to refine certain features we were looking for, such as the unconformity target.
Mm-hmm.
But our unconformity is very shallow. ANT, I don't think the resolution on ANT was sufficient to work as shallow as we're looking for. Maybe it'll work for things that are deeper, but for ours, I don't think it really pulled things out. Didn't really emphasize the structural continuity or just the individual mineralization itself, or the structural players at all. Like I said, it was just really a big blob. But that's what we've seen every single geophysical survey. Gravity, it's a giant blob. Magnetics, it's a giant blob. EM, it's a giant blob.
So you're not going to be using that anymore for targeting. What are you going to be using for targeting?
Gravity,
Okay.
and magnetics.
Okay.
It's we like EM. We really like EM. Looking for conductors. That is a geophysical exploration approach that no company should ever walk away from. However, we have the problem on Hook that we don't actually have conductors. It's not classic. It's not a classic exploration project, which I think this whole area has been overlooked for many years, is because there weren't any conductors on it. There have been modern day VTEM survey flown over. Nothing really highlighted. We flew in an MT survey, magnetotellurics. Really didn't pick anything graphitic out from that either. So we're under the assumption that there are no conductors, no classic conductors on this project, and it just comes down to, well, you got to use magnetics then to really map out the structures, and gravity. We're looking for those density lows. Structures create density lows. Alteration creates density lows, and you put a drill hole into there. If you miss, well, wait for the chemistry, look at the results, look at the rocks, and make your best assessments. Maybe you have to go back to an area and drill further, because again, being in the basin for the last 20 odd years, you learn a lot about being close to a system, and just, you can be that close and say, oh yeah, there's nothing here, and walk away, and yet you're 10 meters away from mineralization.
I did notice you're dealing with some core loss with some of the previous drilling. What's the cause of it? And is rock competency something that could turn into a problem down the road?
No, actually, we've looked at that, and that was something that we wanted to bring to light to the investors and upcoming news, to just add to the idea that Accio is mineable. What's causing the core loss is structure. So it's just natural voids. Maybe solutions have washed things away, but the structure itself creates voids, and that's the big thing. What does it do for us? I think it actually helps us in that where we do see most of our core loss across, and where we do see the weakest rock competencies are above mineralization. So we've got mineralization kind of looks like this. We'll just simplify a V shape. Most of it's over on this side. And where we're seeing a lot of the softest rock and rock competencies are right up here and just into the upper parts of mineralization. So if you consider that from a mining scenario, the less you blast, the easier your rocks are to remove. You drop your costs down. And if you've got nice buttressed hard rocks against either side of the mineralization, you've got a very nice, easy scenario for an open pit.
So, and you don't think that, well, you basically think it it can carry an open pit, so to put it.
Absolutely.
Mm,
Oh yeah, it's all of these open pits. They've all had rock issues.
mm,
They've all had to deal with weak and incompetent rocks,
mm.
porosities, and core losses.
That's because that's being one of the main selling points, I believe, also for this story is that this is going to be a simpler project than what we're used to in the basin. Because the basin is essentially the way I think about the Athabasca Basin. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's kind of a big bowl filled with sand, and that can create issue. And that's why it's made some of the most some of the most profitable mines in the world are there, but it's also some of the most challenging mines. I mean, if we look at what Cameco's had to do with some of their mines and freezing the ground and whatnot, it has been very challenging.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I like Cigar Lake as an example. It was discovered back in the 70s. It basically took 40 years to go in from discovery to production. And that's right now, it is the world's largest uranium mine by far. On an annual basis, it pumps out what 15% of the world's uranium supply from one mine that took 40 years to put into production.
Hmm.
If you had a mine that could pump out 15% of the world's global uranium supply, you think you'd want to bring that into production a lot quicker and reap the profits, not wait 40 years. So that 40 years all comes down to the water issues. That was the real holdup for that thing.
Hmm. What what other work do you have to do before you go and drill it in what did you say, June?
Results, news, interpret everything. But as it stands right now, we're not planning to go back to Accio. We think Accio has been drilled off significantly. The the next steps are to get those exploration results back as well, and to see if there is where's the target at depth if it still exists at Accio. Is there room to grow that? But that's work that has to be done. However, we're not going to drill off that this year. We've made a conscious decision to not drill Accio. We think that we've put enough drill holes into it, we put enough meters into it. It's at the stage now where its next stage is basically an MRE. Now, whether that gets done or not, that's still up for debates, up for grabs. I think it should get done. I think just having pounds in the ground, especially something that looks like that would be economic and mineable, I think that would be do wonders for the company and benefit our shareholders, especially those who have hung on for so many years and have seen the results. I think seeing the fruits of our labor would really benefit our shareholders and our share price. But again, we're not going back to Accio for drilling this year. We need to find the next deposit. If results from Accio haven't compelled investors for the last couple of years, well, drilling the same stuff over and over is not going to make any difference then. Even if we're hitting at 25 meters beneath the surface, the investors may not have cared. So then we go find the next deposit. As again, more mineralization in a new area would hopefully drum up some attention to the company and just start making some waves. If we can find higher grades and more consistently higher grades, then yes, I think that will grab people's attention, especially if it's shallow mineralization.
But it is still hook that we were talking about that you're going to be focusing on? So it is a new area, but within the Hook project.
Yep.
Okay. But and what about the other projects? I mean, you said that you had those in your quarterly updates. You said nothing material on there. What happens to the other? I would typically say two projects, but it's technically three projects they have.
Yeah, we can include Shadow with that, but all of those projects are in good standing for at least a couple of years. So we don't have to go back and work on them this year. I think even Bear's in good standing. Most of Catharsis is in good standing. The area that we really like on Catharsis is in good standing for at least 5 years. So we don't have to be rushed to go back and work anywhere. It's all about exploration and using the 5 million that we have to the best of our ability, and to making sure that we can deliver results for our shareholders. And just Bear didn't really hit it. We need to, well, shouldn't say that, because we need to follow up with Bear with additional geophysics first. We need some additional ground-based geophysics to the west where we drilled, as everything we've seen kind of points in that direction. Very encouraging drills, very encouraging alteration. We have some anomalous chemistry that needs to be followed up, but I think where we drilled was off from where we should be looking. So because Bear needs that extra work, we decided to just push it off. Also, because it was a winter drill program, we decided we don't want to just deal with the winter this year. The Catharsis is basically in the same situation, that the section, we drilled one specific section where we started drilling this year. Absolutely wonderful. Great results. It's that quartz hematite fluid system that we're seeing, with which to me indicates that we've got the fluid pathway right within Catharsis in a couple areas. We see two of them that are around 5 kilometers from each other, but in a V shape. We we flew a high resolution airborne magnetic survey late last year. We didn't get the results until, sorry, not late last year, but late in the drill program last year at Catharsis. We didn't get the results till after we were done drilling, but now going back and looking at those results, we can just see the amount of structures. It's structuralopolis, beautiful area. That's the type of area where that will encourage fluid flow. And now that we've already seen fluids, the hematite port systems there that are carrying uranium, you've got 10 meters, 15 meters of 10 ppm. To everyone else, that means nothing. To uranium explorationists, to an Athabasca explorationist, that should mean the world. That should mean don't walk away from this. Keep plugging away. Find the right structure. So we need to go back into Catharsis again with another gravity survey to cover that 5 kilometer trend, to find to pinpoint the better drill targets. We based our drill targets on the airborne, which does amazing work. Very happy with that. It's a great first pass to get in there and start drilling as it is. But from what we've learned with doing that on Hook, where we flew airborne gravity, and then we've also followed up with ground gravity on some of our better areas, we can see that sometimes that ground gravity does pick up stronger features, and it emphasizes certain features, like the TT zone, that clay zone. As bizarre as it is on Hook, that clay zone with mass amounts of clay, you'd expect it to be this whopping gravity low because the rock density is so low. But in the airborne, it's a blip. In the ground gravity, then it really shows up. So when we go back, we have to do that on Catharsis now. Is get that ground gravity survey done, and then we can go back to drill. But again, we're not we don't have a camp there, and that's one of the other things that has really held us up, or not held us up, but one of the reasons that we don't want to go back to Bear Catharsis, because we just don't have a camp in the area. So we mobilize a camp in, then we demobilize, and that adds cost to the whole operation, makes our per meter cost increase on those projects. Hook has a camp. We have a camp. We bought a camp. We installed a camp last year. Our costs are extremely low. We've got 2 targets defined on Hook, and that's what makes sense for us to go back to. Keep all of our costs low, get more out of our dollars, more meters per dollar by going back to Hook. It's not to say the other projects aren't good, just they're in a safe scenario. They're safe right now that they won't lapse. We don't need to put work on them for a couple of years, and we can deploy our capital better onto them.
But it is, and that's 5 million that you have to be spending on it. I suppose we'll see a drill plan or a separate news release for what exactly you're going to be doing in the near frame. I mean, if you get those results 2 to 3 weeks from now, then on the back of that, you're going to do another news release. I assume about what you're going to be drilling. Is that so?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. We need the results to dictate what's going to happen with our plans. Although we've conceived what we want to do, we want to finalize and we want to make sure that we're going to do things properly for our investors with our
Right.
cash.
Well, let's then wait for that news release and pick it up from there, James, hopefully in the not too distant future. I think I'm out of questions for now. Thank you so much for doing this. But what am I forgetting to ask you here at the end?
Good question. Um, what's going to happen to the uranium market? Who
We
knows?
could talk about
Uranium
that, but
market's hot, man. Uranium market's hot. People just, I don't know. I don't think people understand, but yeah, it's hot. It's growing and it continues to go. The producers, look at all the amount of producers coming back online. I think that tells the story in itself. SWU price is doing phenomenal. Sure, spot price is down. Don't go by spot.
hmm. Well, it doesn't seem like many people out there would agree with you. And also, my crystal ball on the uranium market has proven to be broken. So that's not something I can.
So everybody's crystal ball about uranium, except for Canada.
It would appear
They've
so.
been good.
We'll see what happens in a couple of days. They have their news release, their earnings coming up, so that'll be interesting to see too. But thank you, James, so much for doing this. It was a pleasure, and hopefully speak again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Antonio.
And as always, thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they're necessarily a good or a bad company. I'm not here to endorse nor attack anyone. I am simply here to ask some questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I'm not an experienced interviewer, please let me know and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. This is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, and many others, really, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, most of which are nearly impossible to fully understand. Moreover, these companies that typically get interviewed on Resource Talks are in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which could result in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and then told you about a stock, everything really that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias and you should be careful out there. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in at least some shape or form, because there will always be a bias. Again, albeit clear or not. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentives, but instead double check if what they're saying is true, again, by using setterplus.ca. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I am not saying this to make jokes or laugh with myself. I just simply do not have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits. So I should, under no circumstances, be considered an authority on anything. Again, although this may sound amusing to you, Believe me, it is not amusing and it is not intended as a joke. I'm simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know about what will go up, what will go down, or what will go in circles. Some people even believe that to be rule number one on Wall Street. Nobody really knows. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. Also, unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So even if I did ask a few tough questions in here, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein did not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or investment or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say, I know it's a lot of lawyer talk, but this is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. It is setterplus.ca where you do your research. That's where you find the company's official filings, and I encourage you to read and analyze the management information circular, the financial statements, the management discussion and analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I had listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."